Hey guys, today I'll be reading the Beneath the Endless Night lore book in Destiny 2 because I thought it would be something pretty neat and to practice my voice skills because a few years ago I used to be part of that and voice acting was something I wanted to do but not really the best, but I just want to give it a go anyways because it's fun. Alright, Chapter 1, Acceptance. I'm the most qualified for this. Crow's voice reverberated off the immense window, making the Vanguard commander's office feel even more cavernous than it was. At night, the edges of Zavala's office were usually dark, but the miasma of Vex energy that swirled in the city below made it more so. Crow sighed and paced in gloom like a caged animal. Zavala faced the window and stood, unmoving, a statue carved of Larimar, depicting a test of infinite patience. He glanced over at Ikora, her hands gently clasped, as she watched Crow with disquieted contemplation. "We know," she said, after what felt like an eternity. "But your expertise and relationship with the Elixir are the only deciding factors here. Exactly how long am I going to be continually tried in a court of public opinion?" Crow asked pointedly. "And when in this trial will I be given a clear understanding of what I'm on trial for?" Zval regarded the Awoken's reflection in the window. It reminded him of a near-fatal walk through the gardens not all that long ago. His shoulders sagged. "Bro," Zavala said as he turned to face him, "this is a delicate situation. The consensus has come down on us hard for welcoming the Elixir into the city, and I can't have them using you as another bludgeon." "So that's all this is, a political maneuver," Crow pushed. "To protect yourselves. No hard feelings? Nothing behind the looks you've given me when you don't think I'm watching?" Zavala stiffened, and Crow sensed the conversational temperature in the room change. "This matter aside, if your past identity became public before we have a plan in place, it could cause considerable harm to you and the people you care about," Ikora said eveningly. "People have come to care about you," she added. For a long time, no one spoke, and when Crow did, his voice was small. "Then what? I keep hiding from the shadow of the man I was before? Forever?" "Not forever," Ikora said firmly, "but for now." Crow shifted his focus to Ikora and saw the hurt in her eyes. He'd seen it in Amanda's, too, whenever she spoke of the dead. Without another word, he nodded and left. Ikora closed her eyes, and the breath she had been holding slowly left her. "He's going to Osiris," she warned. "And if Osiris is half the leader he's shown himself to be, he'll tell him the same thing," Zavala said with great fatigue, finally sinking into his chair. The momentary silence that settled between them, Ikora felt an unspoken reciprocation of their generation's old friendship. "I don't know how long we could protect them," she confessed. "Neither do I." Chapter 2, Fractures. Zavala stared at the terminal window until the words blurred together. He lowered his head and rubbed his eyes, trying to collect his thoughts. There were reports from hunters in the field, increased Vex activity across the system, coordinated attacks on Vanguard operations, anomalous disturbances within the city, all on top of Elixir and human confrontations within the city's walls. A bustling hum gloomed to life over Zavala's shoulder, followed by the gentle weight of a ghost that came to settle there. "Is this the best use of your time?" Targe wondered aloud, which elicited a look from the corner of Zavala's eyes. Targe rarely spoke, but when he did, there was a purpose. "I don't recall asking for your opinion," Zavala said as he tried to refocus. "I don't recall giving one." Zavala turned this time to give Targe another look. "You two can't keep doing the work of three people," Targe insisted. "Talk to Anna again." Zavala leaned back in his chair. "Targe, there's no way I'm going to convince..." An alert chimed at the command console to his right. "Incoming call from Empress Keitel," Targe said warily. "Let it go to Depot." Zavala stubbornly rose from his chair. "No." When he said, receiving the call, Keitel's Imperial seal appeared on the screen with a notice, "Audio only." "Empress Keitel, to what do I owe the pleasure?" Zavala asked, tiredly scratching a hand over his stubble. Targe watched for a moment before he dematerialized. "Commander," Keitel greeted, her voice swelling to fill the room as if she were standing there. "The fleet's long-range sensors detected a growing anomaly located in the vicinity of the last city." "Why the sudden concern?" Keitel snorted. "I bear no concern, Commander, but if the Vanguard were suddenly annihilated, it would behoove me to at least be aware." "Of course," Zavala said softly. "Well, we're still here. For now." The leading edge in her tone hooked him. "Why are you really calling?" There was no response from the other side for a few moments. When Keitel spoke next, her tone were as measured as before, but lacked any performative airs. Lakshmi 2's latest broadcast to the city reached our fleet, she said. You are truly a proud hawk sitting in a nest of vipers, aren't you? Lakshmi is a politician. Words are the most dangerous of weapons, Commander, Keitel reminded him. It begins as whispering convictions, then fully voiced dissent, and the next thing you know, you will wake with a knife driven into your chest. Spoken from experience, Zavala jabbed back. Spoken from experience, Keitel doubled down, unashamed. Lakshmi is undermining the Vanguard's authority by diminishing your role in the eyes of the people. Spoken loudly enough and often enough, her words may begin to make sense even to those who are not of the same mind. Zavala sighed, and Keitel felt its weight all across the system. I trust you to honor the terms of our armistice. I do not trust whomever your successor may be, Keitel warned. Zavala weighed anger and intrigue against one another, finding the scales a useless tool in arbitering his response to the situation. He stepped back to the console and did as Cade might say, just wing it. This is not the first threat to my authority I've weathered, Zavala said, his voice rising. So don't delude yourself into thinking otherwise, and don't you dare come at me for whatever remorse you might be feeling about disposing your father. Zavala heard the low rumble of an appreciative vocalization over the speakers. I do not feel remorse because Callus was my father, Keitel explained, her tone softening. I feel remorse because of what Gaul did to my people. We opened the door for the hive, handed Zivu Wrath a knife, and we were surprised when we felt the kiss of steel in our spine. I hate to see a warrior I admire and respect do the same with a much less worthy adversary. But perhaps you are not in need of such an unsolicited counsel. Zavala looked up, out to the lightless city beyond, and closed his eyes. And what counsel is that? And what Keitel said next was not in the voice of an empress, but a friend. Woman of Wrath was my most trusted counselor. The darkness has many hands. Will you recognize its caress before it finds your throat? Chapter 3. Gifts from the Shore. Though the metal crate they were carrying likely weighted more than they did, the two Elixni gave St. 14 a wide berth on their way to the Elixni quarter. You see how they distrust, Saint grumbled. Amanda Holiday scanned the crate into her datapad. The unexpected shipment of emergency supplies from the Tangled Shore nearly offloaded. Don't be such a sourpuss, she said lightly. Mixing with new folks is good for the soul. I mix, Saint objected, but the Fallen, they do not enjoy my company, and I feel the same for them. Maybe that's why Ikora picked you for this, Amanda said. Though Saint was fully helmeted, she could swear he rolled his eyes. Two more Elixni came bearing another crate. One noticed Saint too late and stumbled, dropping the crate. Its security locks popped as it crashed to the ground. A young Elixni wearing House of Light's colors and a bright orange and blue Vanguard lanyard scampered over in distress. Saint sighed. It is fine, he said to the Elixni. Spider probably sends more surplus from the old house dusk. Knowing you can carry supplies from our enemies is a great joke to him. He dragged the crate out of the walkway with one hand and knelt to repair the locks. As Amanda scanned the damaged crate, the young Elixni came close to her. He eyed Saint warily, then held up a sheaf of paper like a shield. Manifest, he stated haltingly. Thank you, said Amanda, with unforced brightness. She tapped her datapad. I've got it digitally. You got it digitally, echoed the Elixni. He fidgeted for a moment, then proudly held up a badge on his lanyard, which read temporary. Amanda smiled. What you got there? Authorization for unloading of supplies from the Tangled Shore. Of supplies sent from Spider, he said. He leaned in slowly, looking carefully at Saint and Amanda. My gentleman, he added slyly. Amanda snorted so abruptly that Saint fumbled with a lock, crushing it in his hand. Saint looked up. Can you two not be quiet? Come on now, Amanda admonished Saint lightly. I don't hear you practicing your Elixni, and this fella's doing his best to bridge the gap. Amanda turned back to the Elixni. That ain't exactly right, but you speak her language pretty well, she said. Thank you, answered the Elixni, clearly eager for conversation. Do all humans here serve Spider Kel? Serve Spider? Amanda spat. Spider's nothing but a... and the 5 spirited words that followed were replete with hard consonants. The Elixir froze, wary of her tone while not understanding her words. Amanda caught herself and took a breath, which is our way of saying he's a kind and generous individual, she said to the Elixir, who nodded along with her. This lock has been ruined by distractions, Saint said as he rose to his feet. He removed the lid and looked inside, then lifted a loose coil of rubbery tubes. Servitor plugs, filters, ether circulators. The Titan made a confused noise. Something wrong? Amanda asked. Not at all, mumbled Saint as he picked up a small golden cylinder, trailing braided sapphire cords. This rebreather alone is worth more than my ship. Amanda moved towards Saint and looked for herself. She recognized a few necessary survival items: condensed prefab, ceramic plating, vapor distillers, generator couplings, but amongst the tubes and filters were otherworldly treasures. A nanomesh sphere filled with thick pink liquid, a chrome conduit splitter with entropic plating, glimmering opal sparkling in a nest of delicate lavender sponges. The hell is Spider playing at? Amanda said to herself. She called out to the Elixir. Are they all like this? Yes, each one is very full of delights from our culture, from our home. We are very thanks. He cocked his head and clicked, Thankful? Amanda nodded. Let me see that manifest, she said. Taking the papers from the Elixir, he nodded and rejoined the other workers. They will still need many of our resources to stay here, Saint said as he carefully resealed the crate. But this will make things easier. I am surprised Spider is so generous even to his own people. Amanda frowned at the manifest. This doesn't make sense, she said. There's a note at the top. Don't know what half the stuff is, but it's gotta be good if Spider had it. It's all written by hand. There aren't values for anything on here. Saint looked at the papers over Amanda's shoulder. The crates came from Spider's storehouse, he said. If he did not send them, who did? Look at this listing, Amanda continued. This item says best osmosis filters, hidden in his bottom drawer. This item is just a row, question marks. Here's one listed as a clock thing. This line says noisy cube, smells bad but everyone likes it. And what's his signature? Amanda squinted at the shape scrawled at the bottom of the form. It's a ship, she guessed, handing the paper to Saint. The Titan turned his head as he looked at the drawing. Aha! He cried, slapping the paper with the back of his hand. Look, it's bird! Amanda looked again at the uneven charcoal lines and could just make out a wobbly black bird. She'd let out a long breath and shook her head. Awful artist, she said. But I guess he's an alright guy. And suddenly, she was smiling. Chapter 4. Conspirators. Rock Jalal narrowed his eyes with impatience as Dead Orbit's head of logistics struggled to satisfactorily account for the faction supply caches. The pair had been wandering around the massive hangar for an hour while an enormous ship was being loaded in the background. Jalal had seen the celestial disappearances and the encroachment of the Black Fleet as clear signs that Dead Orbit's final exodus must soon begin. He had ordered a redoubling of departure preparations, but found the faction's rank and file struggling to keep the pace. Jalal cut off his subordinate's bumbling presentation. This is insufficient. Earth will soon be behind us, and Dead Orbit will have to survive on the supplies that we provide. His mild tone and half-lidded gaze underscored the gravity of his words. Supplies that you were in charge of tracking. You do understand that, don't you? The furious blush spread across the administrator's face. He bowed his head and scuttled away as Jalal crooked his head in annoyance. Behind him, a raspy voice floated up from the maze towering crates. Leaving us so soon, Jalal. He turned to find Lakshmi and Executor Hideo. The future war cult leader stood formally, hands clasped before her, while the head of New Monarchy browsed the shipping crates with casual interest. This is an impressive collection. I had no idea Dead Orbit was so well funded. Hideo gestured broadly to the crates. Jalal shrugged. It's a life's work, Hideo. Everything will need to reseed the human species elsewhere. You should join us. We're fine where we are, thank you, Lakshmi interjected. As a matter of fact, that's why we've come. Jalal bowed his head and gestured toward the hangar exit. The trio ambled outside. Hideo and I are concerned with the current Vanguard leadership, Lakshmi began carefully. Jalal allowed himself a mirthless chuckle. Yes, I've heard your open editorials. You're becoming quite the demagogue. I never knew you held so much strong feelings about the fallen. If it's incitement to speak the truth, then so be it, Lakshmi fired back, sharper than intended. The fallen have been a useful catalyst, but that does not mean we are wrong. Perhaps not about the Vanguard, Jalal replied, but the cult is hemorrhaging members. And I doubt it's your best and brightest remaining. Those who wish to leave are free to do so, Lakshmi said with a pointed glance towards the Dead Orbit ship. We'll be stronger without them. Zavala and Ikora have been ineffective since the speaker died, Ezekiel, Hideo cut in. The disappearance of the planets has caught them unprepared. They are allowing Guardians to use the darkness, and now they've cut a deal with the Cabal? It's just too much. We must have leadership whose points of view is more closely aligned with that of the people, Lakshmi said. And who do you propose, exactly? Jalal stopped the trio at the corner of a broad thoroughfare, where the rumble of cargo movers masked their conversation. Saladin was their first choice, Hideo added in with an ill-conceited smirk. But he is not as cutthroat as he seems. Appears the Iron Lord has a soft spot for Commander Zavala. Lakshmi gave Hideo a look, as though he had revealed too much. We are now considering Saint 14, she said, pointedly bringing the conversation back to the present. Jalal raised an eyebrow. Who else is committed to your little coup? We have somebody in a position of influence, someone who can ensure an orderly transition of power, Lakshmi answered. That person would have to be very clever indeed, Jalal said gravely. For your sake, Ikora Ray is not a target to miss. The moment stretched as Jalal measured the situation. He had long considered what a change of leadership might mean for Dead Orbit, for the resettlement and survival of the human species, and as always, the allure of personal power, a position of eminence in a dying society, was a constant temptation. And who do you propose, exactly? Jalal stopped the trio at the corner of the broad... What the fuck are these sentences? Ugh. And who do you propose, exactly? Jalal stopped the trio at the corner of a broad What is that word? What the Thoroughfare.
Thoroughfare.
Thoroughfare, okay.